Think about the sheer variety of jobs out there. And while how many involve real, tangible risks? You've got folks in healthcare settings, constantly dealing with potential infections, or think about construction workers navigating complex and often high-altitude environments.
Hmm.
It's easy to forget that there's a whole system in place, a set of rules and support designed to keep these individuals and really everyone at work as safe as possible. It's not something that just happens. It's by design.
Exactly. And you, our listener, are keen to understand the nuts and bolts of this system. You're interested in getting a much clearer picture of the regulations that govern workplace safety, especially for those in demanding fields like healthcare and construction. That's precisely what we're diving deep into today.
Right. We're going to unpack the framework that's built to ensure safer working conditions, drawing on a really comprehensive set of official guidelines. Our goal in this deep dive is to understand the critical role played by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. You'll often hear it called OSHA and the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations, or eCFR.
Yeah, the eCFR.
We'll be looking specifically at how these apply to the daily realities faced by healthcare professionals and construction workers. We'll cover everything from what employers are responsible for to the rights that every employee has and the very specific safety standards that are in place to protect them. And our expert here is going to help us make sense of it all and see how these pieces fit together.
Happy to be here.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. What was the driving force behind creating OSHA in the first place?
Well, imagine a time before 1970. Workplace safety wasn't always a given. There were far fewer federal protections in place, and the results were often, well, tragic.
Right.
The Occupational Safety and Health Act was a landmark piece of legislation born out of a growing recognition that people shouldn't have to risk their lives or their health just to earn a living. Its core mission is fundamentally about ensuring safe and healthful working conditions for employees across the country and, crucially, preventing retaliation against workers who speak up about unsafe conditions. It's really about establishing a basic human right, a safe place to work.
So it sounds like it was a pretty significant shift then. Who exactly falls under OSHA's umbrella?
Well, the OSH Act casts a very wide net, covering most private sector employers and their employees in all 50 states, as well as in several U.S. territories and federal jurisdictions. It's interesting to note that while federal agencies themselves aren't subject to direct fines from OSHA, they are still required to maintain safe working conditions, and OSHA oversees their compliance based on reported hazards. So the principle of workplace safety extends quite broadly.
Okay, so let's say you're an employer, maybe running a healthcare facility or a construction company. What are the absolute must-do things you need to be aware of when it comes to OSHA regulations?
Okay, there's a substantial list of responsibilities, and it's crucial for employers to take them seriously. First off, they must adhere to all relevant OSHA safety and health standards. Think of these as the specific rules of the road for workplace safety. But it's not just about following the rules that exist. Employers also have a proactive responsibility to identify and then fix any safety and health hazards that are present in their workplaces, even if there isn't a specific OSHA standard that covers that particular hazard.
So it's not just about checking a box, it's about ongoing vigilance. What else is on that list?
Informing employees about chemical hazards is paramount, especially in healthcare where various substances are used daily. This goes way beyond just putting a label on a bottle.
Right.
It involves having comprehensive training programs in place, ensuring clear and understandable labeling on all containers, and making safety data sheets, or SDS, readily accessible so employees know exactly what they're working with and how to handle it safely.
SDS, okay.
Reporting serious incidents is also critical. If there's a fatality in the workplace, OSHA must be notified within 8 hours. For severe injuries like inpatient hospitalizations, amputations, or the loss of an eye, the reporting time frame is 24 hours.
Wow, okay. That's quick.
It is. Then there's the provision of required personal protective equipment, things like gloves and masks for healthcare workers, or hard hats and safety harnesses on construction sites, and employers have to provide this equipment at no cost to their employees.
No cost, that's key.
Absolutely. Maintaining accurate records of work-related injuries and illnesses is another key requirement, as is posting OSHA information, including official notices and summaries of workplace injuries and illnesses in places where all employees can easily see them.
Visibility is important.
Definitely. And perhaps most importantly, employers are absolutely prohibited from retaliating against any worker for exercising their rights under the OSH Act, such as reporting a safety concern. Finally, they must provide safety training in a language and vocabulary that their employees can understand and offer medical exams and access to exposure and medical records when specific OSHA standards require it. It's a significant commitment to ensuring a safe work environment.
That is a lot for employers to keep track of. What about the employees themselves? What rights do they have in this system?
Employees have some really fundamental rights that are protected by the OSH Act. At the core, they have the right to work in conditions that do not pose a serious risk of harm.
That seems basic, but essential.
It is. They also have the right to receive clear information and training in a language they understand about the hazards present in their workplace, how to prevent injuries and illnesses, and the specific OSHA standards that apply to their jobs. For instance, a construction worker has the right to know the proper procedures for using scaffolding safely, just as a nurse has the right to know how to handle infectious materials.
Makes sense.
Employees can also review records of work-related injuries and illnesses that have occurred in their workplace and obtain copies of any tests that have been done to measure workplace hazards. A really crucial right is the ability to request an OSHA inspection if they believe a serious hazard exists or that their employer isn't following the rules. And they can do this confidentially without fear of any negative repercussions from their employer.
That's huge, the confidentiality piece.
It really empowers employees to be active participants in ensuring their own safety.
It really emphasizes that shared responsibility, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about the what and the who. Where do we find the specifics, the actual rules? That's where the eCFR comes in, right?
Exactly. The Electronic Code of Federal Regulations, or eCFR, is your primary online resource for accessing all of these OSHA regulations. Think of it as the official code of federal regulations, which contains all the permanent rules and regulations published by the federal government, but in a continuously updated digital format.
Continuously updated. How often?
It's updated daily to reflect any changes that are officially published in the Federal Register, so it's much more current and, frankly, easier to navigate than trying to piece together information from various printed documents. It's a collaborative effort between the National Archives and Records Administration and the Government Publishing Office to make this vital information readily available.
So why is the eCFR such a game changer for staying compliant with OSHA regulations?
Well, it dramatically improves access to government regulations. Imagine trying to sift through stacks of paper in a library versus doing a quick search online, right?
Oh, yeah, no contest.
The eCFR makes it so much easier for employers, employees, and safety professionals to pinpoint the specific rules that apply to their particular situation. Its organizational structure is also a huge advantage. It has a comprehensive table of contents and indexing system, making research and navigation far more efficient than leafing through individual Federal Register publications. It's about making this information user-friendly and readily available to everyone who needs it.
And I remember reading about some really useful features it has, like ways to track changes.
Absolutely. One of the most valuable is the point-in-time system. This allows you to see exactly how a particular regulation was worded on any given date going back to January 2017.
Oh, wow.
This can be incredibly useful if you're dealing with a past incident or trying to understand the regulatory landscape at a specific time. You can also directly compare regulations from two different dates to easily see what has changed. It provides a timeline of revisions, has a robust search engine, and you can even sign up for notifications to be alerted about upcoming regulatory changes.
A heads up, basically.
Exactly. Plus, it often includes cross-references to future amendments that haven't yet gone into effect, giving you that heads up so you can prepare. And to ensure you know you're looking at the most up-to-date information, the currency date is displayed right at the top of every page. It's a really powerful tool for staying informed.
That sounds incredibly practical, especially for understanding how regulations evolve. But is the eCFR the ultimate legal authority? Is it like the final word?
That's a really important distinction to make. While the eCFR is incredibly convenient and updated frequently, it's officially considered an informational resource, an unofficial compilation for ease of use.
Ah, okay. Unofficial.
So, for critical legal research, or to absolutely verify the precise wording and effective dates of any regulation, you should always refer back to the original source citations provided within the eCFR and consult the official Federal Register documents. The eCFR is your go-to for understanding the regulations, but the Federal Register holds the official legal record.
Got it. So the eCFR is the user-friendly guidebook, but for the final word in a legal sense, you might need to dig a little deeper into the Federal Register. Okay. Now, it's Lytle 29, Chapter 7. That's where the core OSHA regulations live within the eCFR, right?
Precisely. The Code of Federal Regulations, or CFR, is where all the permanent rules and regulations of the federal government are formally documented. Title 29 specifically focuses on labor, and within that, Chapter 7 is entirely dedicated to the regulations issued by OSHA. This chapter is further divided into various parts, with each part addressing a specific aspect of OSHA's regulatory framework.
Can you give us a quick overview of some of these key parts and what areas they cover, just the highlights?
Certainly. Part 1903 outlines the procedures for inspections, citations, and proposed penalties, detailing how OSHA conducts workplace inspections and what happens if violations are discovered. Part 1904 deals with the crucial area of recording and reporting occupational injuries and illnesses, specifying what types of incidents employers need to track and report to OSHA.
Okay, inspection and reporting.
Then we have Part 1910, which contains the general industry standards. These are incredibly broad and apply to a vast range of workplaces, including many aspects of healthcare operations. For example, regulations around hazard communication, emergency action plans, and access to medical records fall under Part 1910 and are very relevant to healthcare.
General industry, got it.
Part 1926 contains the construction standards, which are specifically tailored to the unique hazards and conditions found on construction sites. This includes regulations on everything from fall protection to scaffolding safety. And there are other parts that cover specific industries like maritime and agriculture, demonstrating the extensive reach of OSHA's oversight.
Okay, let's really focus in on those general industry standards in Part 1910, particularly as they relate to the healthcare sector. What are some of the key regulations that healthcare employers and employees need to be acutely aware of?
Well, one absolutely critical standard is the Hazard Communication Standard, which you'll find at 1910.1200. In healthcare, you have a huge variety of chemical agents in use, from powerful disinfectants to various medications.
Right, lots of chemicals.
This standard mandates that healthcare workers are thoroughly informed about the potential hazards of these chemicals. This includes requirements for readily available safety data sheets, the SDS we mentioned, clear and informative labeling on all containers, and comprehensive training programs to ensure that staff understand the risks and how to handle these substances safely.
Training is key there, too.
Definitely. Another vital area is personal protective equipment, covered under Subpart RIV of Part 1910. For healthcare workers, PPE like gloves, respirators, face shields, and gowns are essential for protecting themselves from infectious agents and other hazards.
The PPE we've all become familiar with.
Exactly. And we can't overlook the importance of having well-defined emergency action plans, 1910.38, and fire prevention plans, 1910.39, in place. These are crucial for ensuring the safety of both patients and staff in healthcare facilities in the event of emergencies like fires or other incidents requiring swift action.
Those are clearly vital for the healthcare environment. Now, let's switch our focus to construction in Part 1926. What are some of the most significant safety concerns and the related OSHA standards that construction workers and employers need to prioritize?
Falls are tragically a leading cause of fatalities and serious injuries in the construction industry, so the fall protection standard, found in Subpart M of Part 1926, is absolutely paramount.
Falls, right, major risk.
Huge risk. This regulation spells out when fall protection is required generally when working at heights of 6 feet or more, and details the acceptable methods, such as the use of guardrails, safety nets, and personal fall arrest systems.
6 feet? Okay.
Scaffolding, covered in Subpart L, is another area of high risk. There are detailed rules for the safe design, construction, inspection, and use of scaffolding to prevent collapses and falls. Excavations, addressed in Subpart P, are inherently dangerous due to the risk of cave-ins.
Trench collapses, yeah.
Exactly. This standard requires the use of protective systems like sloping, shoring, or trench boxes for excavations of a certain depth to protect workers. Electrical safety, covered in Subpart K, is also hugely important on construction sites where temporary power and various electrical tools are in constant use, aiming to prevent electric shocks and fires.
Electrical hazards too, right?
And given recent concerns about long-term health impacts, the silica standard, specifically 1926.1153, is critical. It aims to protect construction workers from serious lung diseases caused by inhaling respirable crystalline silica dust by limiting exposure levels and requiring employers to implement effective control measures.
Silica dust, that's a big one.
It is, and it's worth noting, as you mentioned earlier, that some general industry standards, like the Hazard Communication Standard for chemicals, also apply to construction sites, underscoring the fundamental need for information and training across all sectors.
It's really eye-opening to see the specific regulations tailored to the unique hazards of these industries.
Yeah.
So OSHA sets these rules, but how do they actually ensure that employers are following them in practice? That's where inspections come into play, right?
Exactly. OSHA conducts workplace inspections to verify that employers are complying with safety and health standards and providing safe working conditions. These inspections aren't conducted randomly. They follow a system of priorities based on the severity of potential hazards.
Priorities like what?
Situations involving imminent danger where a serious hazard could cause death or serious physical harm immediately receive the highest priority. These are followed by investigations of fatalities or catastrophes where multiple employees have been hospitalized.
Okay, imminent danger first.
Right. Next in line are inspections based on formal complaints filed by employees, referrals from other agencies, and targeted inspections that focus on high-hazard industries or workplaces with a history of previous violations. Finally, OSHA also conducts follow-up inspections to ensure that previously identified violations have been corrected.
So if an OSHA inspector arrives at a healthcare facility or a construction site, what are the rights of both the employer and the employees during that inspection process?
Okay, employers have several important rights. They have the right to ask to see the inspector's official credentials before allowing entry to the premises. While they can initially refuse entry, OSHA can then obtain an inspection warrant.
They can ask for a warrant.
Yes. Employers also have the right to have a representative accompany the inspector during the walk-around of the workplace, to take their own photographs or videos of the areas being inspected, and to have a closing conference with the inspector to discuss any findings or concerns. If OSHA issues any citations for violations, the employer has the right to receive copies of these citations and to formally contest them or any proposed penalties.
And employees.
Yeah.
What are their rights during an inspection?
Employees also have significant rights. They have the right to have a representative participate in the inspection walk-around, to point out any hazards they observe to the inspector, to speak privately with the inspector without the employer being present,
Privately, okay.
and to be informed about the findings of the inspection. Furthermore, they have the fundamental right to file a complaint with OSHA and are legally protected from any form of retaliation by their employer for exercising these rights.
So both sides have clear rights in the process. And what are the possible outcomes of an OSHA inspection? It can't be just a simple you passed or you failed, can it?
No, it's definitely more nuanced than that. In some cases, an OSHA inspection might conclude with no violations being identified. That's the ideal outcome, obviously.
Right.
However, if violations are found, the employer will receive a formal citation. The citation will detail the specific OSHA standard that was violated, provide a description of the violation, and propose a financial penalty.
Oh, fine.
Yes. OSHA may also issue a notice of what are called de minimis violations. These are technical deviations from OSHA standards, but are so minor that they don't have a direct or immediate impact on employee safety or health.
De minimis,
Yeah.
like minor technicalities.
Pretty much. Citations typically include a specific deadline by which the employer must correct the identified violation. This is known as the abatement date. Depending on the severity and the type of violation, financial penalties can range significantly. Following the issuance of a citation, OSHA often offers an informal conference where the employer can discuss the findings, propose penalties, and the required abatement measures with the OSHA area director.
An informal conference, a chance to discuss.
Exactly. It's an opportunity for dialogue before things potentially escalate.
We've talked about inspections potentially leading to citations. What are the different categories of violations that an employer could face, and what kind of financial penalties are associated with them?
Okay, OSHA categorizes violations based on several factors, including the severity of the hazard and the employer's knowledge or intent. A willful violation is the most serious category. It occurs when an employer knowingly fails to comply with a legal requirement or acts with plain indifference to employee safety.
Willful. So they knew better.
Essentially, yes. These violations carry the highest potential financial penalties, and in cases where a willful violation leads to an employee's death, there can even be criminal charges.
Wow.
A serious violation exists when there is a substantial probability that death or serious physical harm could result from a hazard that the employer knew or should have known about. These also come with significant penalties.
Okay, serious is pretty self-explanatory.
Right.
An other than serious violation has a direct relationship to job safety and health, but is unlikely to cause death or serious physical harm. The penalties for these are typically lower. A repeated violation occurs when an employer has been previously cited for a substantially similar violation and it's found again upon a subsequent inspection,
Uh-oh.
resulting in much higher potential penalties. Finally, a failure to abate violation is when an employer fails to correct a previously cited violation within the given time frame, and this can lead to additional daily penalties until the violation is corrected.
They charge you daily if you don't fix it.
They can, yes. It emphasizes the urgency of correcting hazards.
And what are some of the specific factors that OSHA takes into account when determining the actual amount of a penalty? It's not just the type of violation, right?
No, several key factors are considered. The gravity of the violation, meaning the potential for causing serious injury or illness, is a primary determinant. Violations with a higher potential for severe consequences will generally result in higher penalties.
Makes sense. Severity matters. The size of the employer's business is also a factor, with smaller businesses sometimes receiving adjustments to penalty amounts. The employer's demonstrated good faith, such as having a comprehensive safety and health program in place and actively cooperating with the OSHA inspection, can also influence the penalty.
So cooperation helps.
It can. Lastly, the employer's history of previous violations is taken into account. Employers with a history of similar violations will likely face steeper fines.
It sounds like while enforcement is a key part of OSHA's work, they also offer a lot of resources and support to help employers proactively create safer workplaces and avoid violations in the first place. Is that right?
Absolutely. Beyond its enforcement role, OSHA is deeply invested in providing employers with the tools and resources they need to achieve and maintain compliance. They offer a wide range of training programs through the OSHA Training Institute education centers and provide grants to nonprofit organizations to conduct workplace safety and health training for employees.
Training resources, okay.
Their on-site consultation program is particularly valuable for small and medium-sized businesses, offering free and confidential consultations to help identify workplace hazards and provide advice on how to comply with OSHA standards, all without the fear of receiving citations or penalties.
Free and confidential. That sounds really helpful.
It is. OSHA also has a dedicated outreach and education division that develops and disseminates guidance materials, especially for small businesses, and their website, OSHA.gov, is a treasure trove of fact sheets, safety and health guides, and other informational resources.
So lots of online help too.
Tons. They also foster collaborative relationships through cooperative programs like the Voluntary Protection Programs, VPP, which recognize and promote effective safety and health management systems. Compliance assistance specialists located in OSHA area offices can provide direct, personalized support to employers. And OSHA even offers sample safety and health programs and interactive online tools, often called e-tools, to help employers develop their own tailored safety programs. It's really about fostering a culture of workplace safety through both enforcement and proactive assistance.
That's really encouraging to hear about the support available. Now, workplace hazards and best practices can evolve, and OSHA regulations can be updated. How do employers, especially those in fast-paced industries like healthcare and construction, stay informed about the latest changes? It seems like a moving target.
Staying up to date is indeed crucial, and yes, it can feel like a moving target sometimes. OSHA regulations and their enforcement policies are not static. They evolve in response to new data, emerging hazards, and advancements in safety practices.
So how do you keep up?
To stay informed, employers need to make it a priority to regularly monitor official OSHA sources. The What's New section on the OSHA website, along with official publications in the Federal Register, are essential resources for tracking the latest regulatory changes. OSHA also issues memorandums and directives that provide guidance on enforcement policies and interpretations of standards.
Checking the website and the register regularly.
Exactly. While the specific examples in our source material might not be the very latest breaking news, they illustrate the types of ongoing updates we see, such as changes related to the safety of cranes and derricks, specific enforcement policies for high-hazard operations like welding in confined spaces, the implementation of national emphasis programs targeting particular hazards across various industries, and updates to requirements for personal protective equipment and standards addressing specific hazards like silica exposure in construction. It really underscores the importance of a proactive and ongoing effort to stay informed about the latest developments in workplace safety regulations.
So, to bring it all together, what are the most critical takeaways from our deep dive into OSHA and the eCFR, especially as they relate to protecting workers in healthcare and construction?
Well, in essence, OSHA and the eCFR serve as the bedrock for establishing and maintaining essential workplace safety standards throughout the country. It's a system built on a framework of shared responsibilities and clearly defined rights for both employers and employees.
Shared responsibility, key rights.
Right. We've highlighted the significance of industry-specific regulations, with a particular focus on examples relevant to the daily challenges faced by those in healthcare and construction falls, chemicals, PPE, all that. We've also discussed the process and potential outcomes of OSHA inspections and the various categories of violations and associated penalties. And importantly, we've underscored the extensive array of resources that OSHA provides to help employers proactively achieve and sustain compliance. It's not just about punishment.
And for you, our listener, we hope this deep dive has provided a much clearer understanding of the vital protections that are in place for workers in crucial sectors like healthcare and construction, regardless of whether you're directly involved in these fields or not. Being informed about these regulations not only empowers employees, but also contributes to fostering a safer, more responsible, and ultimately more productive work environment for everyone.
And maybe this raises a final thought for you to consider. Given the ever-evolving nature of workplace hazards and the regulatory landscape, what proactive steps can individuals and organizations take to cultivate a continuous culture of safety awareness and ongoing improvement, perhaps even in areas where the direct application of these specific OSHA regulations might not be immediately obvious? Something to think about.
Thank you, viewers, for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with your colleagues. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking that subscribe button below so you never miss out on valuable insights. I'm Brian Edmonds, signing off. See you in the next one.